Hey, welcome to the first layer. I'm Richard. That guy over there is Brian.
Yes. Over here. Hey guys, how's it going?
Good.
Happy hot Sunday.
Oh my God, it's 30 degrees outside already.
Yeah, and it's only going to get worse, so everyone stay safe this week.
Yes, everybody stay safe this week. What are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about your problems that you're having. We're going to try and fix those problems. And then we are going to...
3D printing related problems.
Yes.
I'm sorry we can't solve your marriage.
Yeah, we can't solve your marriage, but...
Maybe we can. Sell your 3D printers.
If you joined us last night, you know that we got this wood burner, or
it's a laser.
A laser from Made the Best, and I did some experimenting. These are all at different power levels and different speeds. This was at 1,200 millimeters per minute and at 20%. The bottom one was 2,400 millimeters per second at 30% power. And this one was at 6,000 millimeters per second and at 50% power. And you see it's kind of light. But. My big butt.
What do you do?
Did another one. This is done at 80% power and at 3,000 millimeters per minute. And you can actually feel that it's cut into the wood. It's not on the surface. I think I have to go up to maybe 90 or 100% to get this to do a nice char. But I was thinking about this and thinking about this unit that we got. This is the 002R Laser Master 2 Pro. And Brian, you know I've got a lot of reclaimed wood in my backyard because
that's one way of putting it.
I have a lot of reclaimed wood in my backyard, and for those of you guys that don't know, I'm an avid carpenter. When I was not working in the entertainment industry or wasn't traveling with a band or anything like that, I was doing other jobs, and one of those jobs is carpentry, and I really love carpentry. I love doing it. So I thought, why not take this machine, make some name signs to put on your front gate, your back gate, out, things like that. So that's why I tried doing this today. And that's wrong.
For some weird reason, when we kept on talking about Sanford and Sons during the live stream yesterday, and when I saw how you wrote the Clevelands there, I thought we would need to zoom in on it like a 70s sitcom opening at some point.
Well, I could have put the Cleveland Show.
Yeah, but we got beaten to that by Seth MacFarlane. So
yeah. But don't you think we could do? Don't you think we could do signs like this? I think that'd be nice.
Gorgeous
on a piece of 1x4 fence board that I've got sanded down and then treated for the outdoors. What do you guys think? You like something like that?
That's something that kind of died off in the 90s. Remember how everybody had like a family name outside their house? And I found it was more inviting. And nowadays houses are just numbers. So, it's time to, now that the world is reopening in there, it's time to reintroduce ourselves to the neighbors. And what a great way with making a custom name for your house to introduce your family to the neighborhood. Whether it's laser engraved, 3D printed, but not with PLA because it's going to warp. But, with ABS or even PETG or something, just do something neat for your family outside your house to introduce yourselves to the neighborhood.
Exactly. And, the other thing I thought about, there's all kinds of possibilities. We can engrave onto Lexan or plexiglass you can buy at the hardware store. Wood is super expensive right now, as we all know. It's happening all over the world. So if you can use reclaimed lumber, please do so. Make use of it. Don't just throw it away. Don't just burn it in your fire pit. Try and reuse it. If you've got the tools, I'm fortunate enough to have a good collection of woodworking tools. I don't have everything I want. I don't have an electric planer or anything like that. But at the end of the day, I think that if you can use up the stuff that you have, reclaim stuff that's not going to end up in a landfill. Please do so. And that's going to bring me to another point about 3D printing. 3D printing is one of those plastic wasteful hobbies that we're all in and that we talk about every week on this show. But at the same time, it can be made into useful things. We've seen mugs, we've seen lamps, we've seen gifts for family, lithophanes, all kinds of great things. We've even done rockets out of 3D printing that flew amazingly well. So there's all kinds of things that you can do with 3D printing. But when you combine 3D printing with other hobbies such as woodworking, things like that, it can really take things to the next level. If you're looking for a knob that you can't find anymore, model it in CAD, print it on your 3D printer. You will now always have a file to replace knobs in your house. Brian?
And not to mention, too, most of the plastic, I know there's always the argument of, why print it when you can buy it for $5 or whatever. That can be a valid argument. However, with 3D printing, if you, because of the nature of how you're producing the product versus an injection mold system, you can reduce the mass while retaining strength by modifying your infill settings, by modifying your exterior perimeters. And in a sense, you're actually reducing your usage of plastic as well. So in this day and age where, we focus on basically the first two R's, because recycling, as we know, has had some varying views. First step is to refuse to use non-reusable items. And then the second one is to reuse. And when we're reusing this plastic, a lot of the plastics that are produced out there are recycled plastics. And by using a 3D printed version, we're using less plastic than the manufactured product. And we're also not introducing the waste of all the packaging, of all the shipping costs. And before you know it, just even using a 3D printer, even though it is a plastic material, is better for the environment than simply going out and continually buying full solid objects. So that's just a bit of my opinion. But, I'd like to hear what you guys think. Are there things around the house that you've just gone and 3D printed to get it quicker? Or do you have things that, a lot of us have been around this hobby for 6 years potentially now. Are there things you printed when you first started that you're still using today? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, we put it in the comments today, and Jerry's on the other computer. Say hi, Jerry.
Hello.
She's going to be putting up your questions on the screen for us today. There's a lot of great stuff that you can do with simple home manufacturing hobbies like 3D printing, laser engraving, all kinds of stuff. We're going to be exploring a lot more laser engraving here as we move forward. As I mentioned last night, I talked with our friend Jim Ellsworth, the third from Edge of Tech. We're going to have him on the show because he's done a lot of laser engraving, and he's done a lot with these types of diode lasers. And, making signs like I did today, or just playing last night with this thing, I do notice that at the end of the day, I have a lot to learn, just like I did when I started 3D printing. I had a lot to learn, and a lot of you guys are still in that same boat. There's a lot to learn. So we're going to get some expert advice from Jim in a few weeks. And in the meantime, we're going to be putting up some pictures of this. We're going to make some stuff. And who knows, it might be a nice little source of revenue. You never know. If you've got an Etsy shop, you can use something like this, like you're using your 3D printers on your Etsy shop. And we have friends like Morgan Pierce, who has an Etsy shop. He sells all kinds of great things on his Etsy shop. He's made deals with some designers to take their designs, 3D print them, and sell them on his Etsy shop. So there's all kinds of ways that you can turn your hobby into a source of revenue. And in the
as we call it here in Canada, we call it a side hustle.
A side hustle, yeah, exactly. I think they use that in the States too. But practical prints, you don't always have to print, stuff like this, like toys. You don't always have to print toys, but you can print practical things, customize light switches, numbers for your house. The possibilities are endless. My brother Raymond. Go ahead. My brother
I was
Raymond.
just going to say,
go ahead. We keep
got a little time
on
delay there, guys.
Okay.
In the case of us, the sign for our business is going to be 3D printed.
Yeah. I think we're going to add some laser in there, too.
Maybe.
But
if only I had one.
yeah, exactly. You can come over and use this one anytime.
Yes.
But, you know, at the end of the day, there are things to be said. I want to pull up, and I have one here. Cool. You know, we all have tools sticking around our house. And we don't know what to do with them. I'm caught on something on the floor here. We all have empty spools around the house that may have a little bit of material on them, may not have enough to do anything with, and you take it off, put it in your 3D printer pen. But I'm going to be showing you how to take these in an upcoming video and turn them into something useful. I saw some stuff today that really kind of piqued my interest. I'm not going to give it away, but we're going to show you how you can use those empty spools in your hobby room. Okay, so something to keep in mind, something to watch out for. So there's all kinds of great possibilities out there. Anybody got any questions today so far? Go start.
Yeah, I saw a couple of them popping.
Why'd that come up?
The show. Panic.
Panic.
Yeah, there was a question up here. Let me just see if I can drill it back up here. Sorry about that. We had our feed move a little quick. From Ken Bentley saying, "Hi, my Anycubic is 6 months old, won't print well, just stringy and won't stick. I also have a BQ-B1, which now the screen goes blank and just stops shortly after. Any suggestions?" So just starting off with the Anycubic, I won't lie to you, bed adhesion and stringing are the number 1 and number 2 problems I see with 3D printing. And we can go and give you all of our techniques, and they may work for you and they may not. So the key with bed adhesion, first and foremost, is a very clean surface. And the reason for that is our good old finglers here. Our body produces oil, and even though you might be in a sterile environment, even when you get in there and start peeling off those prints, those oils from your fingers are going to build up on the surface and will never be visible. They won't create a shine or anything. But that will build up over time, and the only way to remove that is with a good isopropyl wipe down, a good clean. And if you really need to clean it, go and get a oil removing dish soap such as Dawn and water and wash it off with that, followed by wiping it clean with isopropyl. Now, Richard, maybe you probably have a bit more experience with stringing than I do because your temperatures are probably a bit more volatile than mine. What are your best techniques for stringing?
For stringing, what I usually do is, first and foremost, I want to make sure that all of my filament is dry. And the more pure the concentrate, the easier it is to have it absorb moisture from the air. Now, I've said this before, and some people have tried to argue with me about it, but when you stick a roll of filament, like from our friends over at Matter 3D, which we know is very pure, when you take a roll of this filament, you stick it in a bucket of water overnight, take it out, and print with it, it hasn't absorbed the water or the moisture molecules. It's just been sitting in water. Water has retention. It literally has a skin. So anything that goes into it forms skin. Okay, so it's not absorbing water molecules. It's not absorbing real water. Pour water on it, you can still print with it. It absorbs water molecules. This is something that we have to keep in mind. So when we are using pure concentrates like Matter 3D, and this is one of their new colors, this is their blue PLA, which is now available on their site. Brian, you got a message about that last night. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes.
Yes.
But when you want to dry out your filament first, so put it into a filament dryer. That's the best bet. Or get yourself one of those dehydrators. Brian, you've got one of those.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And there's a few other guys in our community that have those as well. So take that and dry out your filament first before you run it through. That will reduce some of that stringing. It's also going to depend on the material. If you're using PETG, PETG is more susceptible to moisture molecules in the air. We live in a very dry climate here. There's not a lot of moisture in the air. It's like living in the desert. But it's still a
problem, and I don't think this is going to focus, and I apologize. Maybe it will here. We'll see. But if you can see, this is actually some PVA, some water-soluble filament. And if you take a look at, can you see those little dots on the lines? That is little pockets where water has melted. Water is melted as it's going through the extruder and basically takes the place of your filament coming out. And that is the first signs of water saturation. When it gets really bad, if you flow your filament through your nozzle, at first it'll start coming out almost a little chunky. And then in the worst case scenarios, you're actually going to hear it hiss a little bit as the water is big enough to hear it vaporize. Because our nozzle is heated up to about 2 times the melting point, the evaporation point of water. So it's becoming water vapor the moment it passes through that nozzle. And so drying out the filament is really just heating it and allowing that water to evaporate out of the material before it goes through the printer. And then usually your printer has a better chance of handling an air pocket than it does the water pocket. So this is why we focus so much on drying filament. You can't always tell just by feeling it. There are a couple times where you can, but usually by that point it's really, really bad. And on some filaments that we bought before where it was water saturated at the factory, sometimes there's just no recovery. Let's be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that can avoid stringing is look at your retraction settings inside your slice, depending on the material that you're using. When you're using stuff like PETG, you want it to pull back a little more and a little faster so that it doesn't get that stringing. One of the reasons we get stringing is due to little to no retraction, and it's got that little wisp that is just going to pull from one point to the next because the filament is not going back up into the heated nozzle. It's just staying there and it's going to string across. So when we see stringing, that is...
our timer's back again.
Why is that popping up?
We are just that amazing. That's our 5-minute updates.
I'm going to close that for today. Yeah. But in any case, that's something to keep in mind. Now, as far as bed adhesion, if you have too much moisture in your bed, you're not going to be able to get it to stick to the bed. Doesn't matter what. You can put glue stick down on your glass. You can see I got a piece of glass right here. It has a ton of glue stick on it. I got to clean it off. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that first and foremost it's dry, then do a bed level before you put that filament back into the machine. I always recommend that people do a bed level, heat up the nozzle, heat up the bed to the temperature that you normally print at. Do your bed level, and do it in the right way by going crisscross. You want to go crisscross across the bed. So if your starting point is, let me get this out here again. If your starting point is here, there we go. You want to go diagonally across, fix this corner. Slide down, fix this corner. Go diagonally, fix this corner, then go back to your starting position and fix this corner. I don't tend to worry about the middle because most printers today, especially, the big box ones, and I'm going to call Creality a big box one because they're very popular in the marketplace, is they either will cup or they'll bow. So there's your difference. If it cups, then you've got a dip, and you'll notice that in your print. Or you'll notice that if you take your piece of paper and your nozzle back to center. If it's bowed, you're going to notice that too, because that piece of paper is going to be really, really tight. So the best thing to do is, like I said, go ahead and do that bed level afterwards, and you should be fine. Now, what was the other part of that question? I want to answer it real quick.
Oh yeah, the other part was regarding a BQB1 where the screen is going blank, and then the print stops, and that sounds to me like either a major firmware fault or there's something electronically wrong with the board because
Right up there.
back in the old days, with some of the early versions of Marlin, I know that there were memory leaks where at some point the LCD would corrupt and then would eventually go blank, and sometimes the print would just stop altogether. But this sounds to me more like there's something electrically going wrong, probably when you're heating up the heat cartridge or heating up the bed, and it's causing the system to fault. That's going to be quite a bit of a complex one. Unfortunately, neither of us have the B1, so I would recommend targeting the user-specific groups on Facebook there for the BQB1, just to see if it's a known issue. I've personally never heard of that particular one, but it sounds to me like it's definitely something with the electronics faulting. Not something you did.
And Ken Bentley says, I just use Pi, also have Sunlu dryer. Great, you've got a Sunlu dryer, that's awesome. Still won't print properly, and the bed is brand new Ultra Base and a new extruder. Now, don't confuse your extruder with your hot end. They're two separate things in the mechanics of a 3D printer. Your hot end is where your material melts. Your extruder is what pushes it into that melt zone. So be careful that you get that terminology right. Now, as far as the Ultra Base goes, do not use alcohol on an Ultra Base or any base that has that black grid coating on it. Because if you do, what it's going to do is after you've wiped it down and you pick that up, you're going to notice that your paper towel or if you're using those alcohol swabs, you're going to notice that it's yellow. And what that's doing is it's taking properties or breaking down properties of that Ultra Base, and then nothing will stick to it. Okay. All right.
Yeah, and just in regards to the Sunlu dryer, guys, it works great once you fix it, okay? Out of the box, it is not a good experience. Now, I was going to do a video on this product, and the fact is there wasn't enough talking points to even warrant 3 minutes of content. However, what I can share with you is that I hooked up a camera and shot a time-lapse of it over 4 hours with the LCD, both with the front display temperature of the maximum, which was, I think, 55, and a probe that I put right inside, right where the filament comes out to measure the air temperature. And over 4 hours, it never exceeded 42 degrees Celsius, which is not enough to dry any material. So if you go and you do some searching on YouTube, because a lot of people have made some great videos on this, there's some excellent modifications that can be made to it to get it up to 55 degrees. And once you do those modifications, which are mostly 3D printing, and some of them are just even disassembly, that machine is going to work phenomenally better for you. The biggest caveat is to get a fan inside there to circulate the air, because it does not evenly dry it. So don't just assume that because you're putting filament in the fila dryer right now that it's drying it. Right out of the box, I won't lie to you, it's a glorified filament roller.
Yeah. Okay, Dominic Versetto is asking, Prusa Slicer seems a lot harder to dial in than Cura. I can't find most of it, the parameters that I'm used to. Is there a reason why print times are more twice as long as using Prusa Slicer? As far as print time goes, you've used Prusa Slicer more than I have, so I'm going to refer this one to you, Brian.
Let's twirl this on over into Prusa Slicer here. So here's a 2-color octopus I was playing with last night while I'm dialing in my WeDo here. I want to go over a few things with Prusa Slicer. Number one, to find any setting, if you haven't watched my video yet, I highly encourage you to watch it. But there's this little search icon at the top here, and you can type in any setting. Let's just say infill. And here are all the different infill settings. And it tells you what mode they're under, if it's under advanced or if it's under beginner. I always recommend setting everything to expert at the top, because that just exposes everything for you. However, if we go through here and let's say speed, infill, bottom fill pattern, if we click on that, Prusa takes you right there and gives a flashing arrow to show you the setting. So that is the easiest way to find settings. I find it's actually much easier than Cura for that. Now, with relation to print times, it 100% comes down to this. If we go over to the printer settings and we go to the machine limits here, we can see I have put in maximum feed rates, maximum accelerations for my machine, and so forth, maximum jerk and all that. At the top, it has how to apply limits. And if you notice, I have it set to use for time estimate. Most profiles by default actually have emit to G-code, which means it overrides the default settings in your machine. And that might cause some slowdowns if your machine was already dialed in for its acceleration and jerk. So because I know all of my settings of what I've programmed into the firmware, I transfer these and I use them for time estimates so that the time estimates when I do my slice at the end are quite accurate. And if we go and see here by feature type, for instance, Prusa Slicer is awesome in that it breaks down all of the different times for each feature. So we can see on this one, because this was a real strange test I ran, where I only had one single perimeter and no infill, basically, we can see external perimeters take up the majority of the print time, which is 12 hours and 47 minutes. Now, based off these, we can actually go through and say, okay, I think the external perimeters are taking too long. I can modify my speed settings for that. Or I can modify the number of external perimeters. If the infill, in the case, well, support material is 45 minutes. If I have too much support, I can trim that down. If I want to do different for the infills, the bridge infills, top infills, obviously we have no infill on this one, but it'll take out too long, unfortunately, to show you here with the slice. But you can use this to actually break down the features that are taking the most time to better understand how to optimize your printer. This is something that Cura has never quite done to this level. However, if they do implement it, then that's going to be awesome. But this is going to give you a detailed breakdown of why your print is taking so long. And I think you'll find that in this case, 12 hours and 47 minutes, I'll have to go back and look at my program here. According to Pronterface, this print took 13 hours and 36 minutes. So it took about an extra hour, and there's part of that could be heating factors, and as well, too, the time it took to change the tools over, because it had to change the tool every single layer. So in my mind, that's actually really accurate, and that's something that Cura has never got right, because it doesn't take into account your machine's acceleration and jerk factors and all that, whereas Prusa Slicer does here. So that's kind of the quickest and easiest way to look into optimizing Prusa Slicer. I think that's going to get you down to figure out why it's taking so long. Hopefully that helps you.
What do we got next, Jerry? I know. There we go.
We're looking for something. There we go.
In the last few prints, I'm having some partial layers that are not fusing with the other layers. Same setting, same spool of filament. This is from Andrew Makajewski. Hope I got that right. Makajewski. If you're having layer adhesion issues, where are you in the roll? That can be a factor as well. If it's the beginning of a new roll, you shouldn't have any problems. If you're down near the end of the roll, you may have an issue. Because remember, when they make this stuff, it goes through a long series of baths and then starts winding onto the spool. I've worked in a plastic factory part-time. I worked in one for a little while when I was younger. And at the end of the day, that first stuff that comes off is not usually the best stuff. But at the end of the day, you can, if you're having layer adhesion issues, try lowering your fan speed.
Or bumping up your temperature slightly.
Or bumping up your temperature slightly. One of those, or a combination of both of those, will help you get those layers to stick properly. I'm in the middle of the spool, he saes.
Yeah,
up your temperature and drop your fan speed by about 10%.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, well, we'll try and focus on this. This was just another little test block I was doing the other day here, so apologize. Everything's inverted on my side, so I always look at the wrong way. But when you're printing a layer, you're basically you have to push out molten plastic in such a way that it's molten enough to start to weld itself to the layer beneath it. And if your temperature is too cold either on the material that you're trying to bind to or the material that you're extruding, then all you're simply going to be doing is the equivalent of pouring concrete layers on top of itself. And have you ever seen one of those videos on 3D printing a house? The concrete is kind of dried by the time you're printing the next layer. So you're relying on the stuff coming out of the nozzle to do the fusing. And it's that perfect balance of the two that will get you good adhesion. So when you're too cold, your material, it's molten, kind of like molasses, but as it comes out, once it touches the surface of the material it's binding to, it's cooled so rapidly that it has no time to truly fuse, and all it really does is settle on top. And that's why, you take two materials, you need to glue them together sometimes. You need to use the glue as the binding method, and since we're not doing that as we print, we need the material to be hot enough. Now, yes, increasing the temperature may fix it, but may also increase stringing, and this is where you have to find this perfect balance. And as we've noted here, this printer room that I'm in right now, it's fluctuated between about 26 and 33 degrees Celsius over the past few weeks because of all these weather changes, and that impacts the material, even though you may not feel it in the room. So seasonally, you do have to readjust your printer settings, and that's why we always say it. It doesn't take a lot of material to do a calibration cube. It doesn't take a lot of material to do a temperature tower. Just go ahead and run one once every 4 months or whenever you change material, just to make sure that it is acting appropriately, and so you don't throw out a big print. You end up throwing out a 20-cent piece of plastic.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, listen, guys, I want to draw your attention to our good friend Jerry Knapp, who's down in Las Vegas. He has a channel called 3D Printing and Painting here on YouTube. He also has a community on Facebook. He's having a huge giveaway Saturday at 1 p.m. Pacific. Subscribe and ring that bell so you get notified when he's got stuff going on. And Jerry has been a part of our membership right from the very beginning, and we can't express how proud we are of him for getting to the milestone that he's hit recently. I believe he's up to 2,500 subscribers now.
Yep, it's a 2,500 subscriber special, and although we weren't able to contribute anything for the show, Jerry, Jess, and I have decided at some point here when things open up, we're coming down to Vegas, so we will be giving you a ring.
There you go. I can't afford to travel right now. That being said,
yeah, planning for the future.
That being said, another good friend of ours, Tim, from DeWitt 3D Canada, he's always doing live streams. Show him some love as well, please. Now, Peter Reynolds, our good friend, what do you guys think of the Ender 7? I haven't really looked at the Ender 7 yet.
I saw the video of it. I mean, a Creality, I don't know. They're always experimenting with something new, and I can't blame them for it. But as I said on the when we were talking about motherboards and stuff lately, never go with the first iteration of anything, even if it's a big company. Yeah. Don't get into Kickstarters, guys, because simply put, the products are not being tested at a mass scale before they're going out. It used to be a time, I do recall when we were doing it, when Angus from Maker's Muse were doing it, we were getting all these Ender 3s and doing these great reviews and all that, and then they changed the design, and then people 4 months later Google up, find our review, and can't tell the difference. So we say it's a great printer, but it's actually garbage. Yeah. So we're not seeing printers go out to the community really anymore, and I don't like us being beta testers. I think unless you really know your stuff, you shouldn't be jumping on these Kickstarters.
I agree.
So
I agree 100%.
Ender 7, I mean, it looks neat. Again, I haven't reviewed the technology of what they're doing into it. I know they're talking a lot about higher speeds and stuff like that, but yeah, at the end of the day, I don't know. I think there are better proven designs. I think the Creality stuff is starting to get a little expensive. I wanted to get back to that $350 Canadian hobbyist market and make basically a good quality, simplified version of some of the more complex machines.
Well, I've just pulled it up here, so let me just switch to that real quick. So here's the Ender 7 here. What is it? At the end of the day, what is it? It is...
It's kind of like a rat rig clone, almost.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a rat rig. Is it something I would go ahead and buy right away? Again, no. If they were to send us one, we'd certainly review it. But like with all of our reviews, we give you our honest opinion. And if we like it, we like it. If we don't, we don't. If we see problems in it, we're going to let you know that.
Before we ramble on about this for one moment, I just wanted to show you guys something. Richard, can you kind of scroll up to that main photo of this thing?
Yep.
I want everyone to look at this for one moment and tell me, fundamentally, what makes this different from an Ender 5. And the only thing I can see is a fancier chassis and a touchscreen. And this thing goes for the same price as a Prusa i3 MK3S kit. So, why would you buy this? Because if you guys know anything about the Ender 5, the number one flaw of the Ender 5 is that the rod that raises the Z is located on the back of the bed, but there's nothing on the front. So as a result, it's all counterbalanced to the back of the bed, and you get vibrations when you're printing really quickly. So they're saying you can print 250 millimeters per second, but I happen to know that our good friend Mark Williamson at Ender Extender makes a kit that turns the Ender 5 to have dual Z to fix this particular issue. So yes, on the top, they put in linear rails. That was not needed for the Ender 5 design. And I'm sorry to be really critical on Creality, but I expect better from them because they have a lot of experience. That linear rail conversion is not required unless you're doing something like a Voron. Now, if you notice here, the reason why we're doing the Voron is because the Voron lifts up and down the X and Y, but it doesn't lift the Z. So the reason it does that is so you can get the much higher speeds without having to worry about wobble on the build plate. And yet here with the Creality, they're trying to make the Voron comparison, but they're using the same Ender 5 design. And I don't understand. I mean, the print build size is 250 by 250 by 300. It's slightly bigger than an Ender 5, and you can get an Ender 5 for $300 US on the high end. So I'm sorry, guys. I am going to wait to see with this thing. I don't think it's even remotely close to $1,000 US in value. I would put this maybe at the $500 to $600 US on the upper end, and that's only if there are upgrades in the hot end and there is something that I'm not seeing here that makes that Z more rigid. I have always been a Creality advocate, but they're going the way of companies like OnePlus, where now they're trying to bring out a new model every year to increase revenue and increase value of the company. So, guys, this is my personal opinion. Don't jump on this yet. Wait 4 months, and if you want to spend $1,000 US, you can actually buy a Voron kit in that build dimension for about the same price.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of strange the way that they've got that machine set to go. Jerry, what do we got for questions? Not staying.
Yeah, I saw a non-fan mentioning it's Core XY. Now, for those of you who don't understand Core XY kinematics, it's just basically you have a motor A and a motor B, and they're both used to drive around X and Y. Core XY is not a definitive thing of faster printing. It just reduces the load on the motors to allow you to go some super fast speeds that most FDM printers can't even achieve, even if you implement a Core XY. So that kind of leads us into our next question here for cats here. What do you think of the Ender 5 Plus? Richard, I'll let you talk a bit about this. I haven't used one, unfortunately. So
I've used one, but very, very briefly. In all honesty, I'm not a big fan of the Ender 5 series, not the Ender 5 or the Ender 5 Plus. The Ender 5 Plus, I believe, is... let me just pull it up here.
It's the bigger one that Luke Hatfield provided a lot of engineering design for.
Yeah.
And it's basically the Ender 5, but with a build volume of a CR-10. So it's a 300 by 300 by 400. And I have heard good things about it. Like the first batch did have some problems, but the design was in the right mindset. And again, if you look at the Ender 5 Plus versus this CR7, this Ender 7, you're going to quickly see there's no really understanding of where that extra increase in price delivers value to you. Now, I mean, that being said, the Ender 5 Plus, I do kind of think it's a better machine than like a CR7 CR-10 V3 just because you're not using a bed slinger design. It's better for a smaller space. But because of the price point they brought it in at, I couldn't justify buying one for myself. And when I looked at converting my 10S5 over to the similar design, that's how I ended up getting to the Voron side. So
well, the other part of that, too,
I know we talk a lot about. Yeah.
The other part of that is that the Ender 5 and the Ender 5 Plus are not Core XY machines. Bear that in mind.
Not.
So if somebody's trying to sell you on a Core XY, this is not the machine to buy, because at the end of the day, this is still a Cartesian in the kinematics of the way that it's set up. And you'll know that because of the way that the belts are all routed. So there's a separate stepper motor for the X, there's a separate stepper motor for the Y, and there are separate stepper motors for the Z. And in this case, the bed drops down, which is okay. No problems there.
Yeah.
We both agree that's a decent part of the design. But by not making this one a Core XY, the Plus, I think they missed an opportunity. Now they're trying to play catch up with the Ender 7, and I believe the Ender 6 as well as Core XY, is it not? Maybe I'm wrong.
Are we talking about the CR-6S? Their modeling, I am really frustrated with.
Yeah, it's confusing now.
It's too freaking confusing.
Yeah, it's very confusing now. So at the end of things, I know I say at the end of the day, that's just me. It's not a Canadian thing. It's just me. Somebody made a comment about that earlier.
Long story short is my Canadianism.
Yeah.
Long story short.
And his stories are never short, just so you know.
Mm-hmm.
But the Ender 6 is better though from what Tom Lama, I hope that Tom Lama is stating here. I think that's, if it's working for you, great. Here's what I say. If you've got a 3D printer that works for you, that you like, it does exactly what you need, you don't need to change it. You don't need to upgrade to the newest model or buy all the Creality products. You don't need to do that. Learn what you have. Learn the ins and outs of what you have.
Yep.
Print with what you have. If it's not up to your complete specification or your taste in printing, you've seen better prints from, let's say, a friend of yours or from somebody on the internet using a different machine, that's not always going to work for you, because what works for one person doesn't always work for the other. So keep that in mind as well. And
don't go down the mod pipe, because mods sometimes resolve issues, but sometimes cause way more issues. Chris Travis had a great point here. Fast speed doesn't mean much if your prints look like junk. Absolutely.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you know what? I've realized there's a lot of mentality in the community that printers are supposed to be 8-hour machines, where all prints should be done in about 8 hours. Because every week I see a question of, is it safe to leave my 3D printer overnight? And it's a bit of a loaded question, because you don't want to answer yes in case someone tries to blame you for liability. But at the end of the day, I just finished a Night Owl helmet on the CR-10 behind me here, and it took 4 or 5 days. And I just left it 24 hours a day, and it was fine. The longest print I think I've done was about 14 days. Again, just left it and ran. I mean, if you're worried about things, Octoprint and programs like that are a great system for hitting emergency shutdowns. You can get security cameras, like I run Wise cameras for about $30 US. You can get one of these, and you can remote even from your phone anywhere in the world and just check in and see how your devices are running. Now, that's not to say they're completely autonomous. There is always a safety factor to consider when having a machine that is used to generate generate heat. There's always the inherent risk of something potentially going wrong. So it's always advisable to have some level of supervision in certain hour increments. Make sure your house's smoke detectors are operating accordingly. Make sure, in the case when we're building the Voron, you can get thermal fuses now that can pop the power if it exceeds a certain temperature. There are plenty of protection systems available out there that don't come stock in the machine if you want that extra level of security. But we run our machines 24 hours a day, have never had a fire, have never had anything like that. So just to give you a little bit of comfort, it's okay to go and try your first overnight print and check on it in the morning. Just try and have a good night's sleep and don't, sit there a wide awake in bed of, is the printer still running?
Yeah.
That was my first couple of months.
Mine too. When I started running prints overnight on my older machines, some of you guys saw a photo on Facebook recently of some of the machines that I had when I got started. And DeWitt 3D Canada, he makes a great point. Webcam and a smart plug like this one right here.
You haven't opened it yet, you jerk.
No, I haven't. So many things on my plate right now. Yeah. This can be a great safety device on your 3D printer. It can also be a hindrance if somebody has access to your phone and can get into your smart plug. But
guys, that plug was $8 Canadian at Home Depot. Okay,
Yeah,
this is disposable garbage. You can go onto Amazon. You can even get one that's Alexa or Google compatible now, and just yell at it and be like, "Shut it off!" and it'll kill it remotely. So there are tons of protections. It's about education. We want to educate you guys on the safety of 3D printers, but we don't want to tell you that it's going to burn down your house. Just briefly talking about that, because every time someone talks about 3D printer fires, you see the videos about the ANET A8. And the fact of the matter is, it wasn't even really anything that they designed. What it was they had turned off what they called the thermal runaway protection. And we're going to show some videos this summer. It's too hot to shoot them right now, but we're going to show you some videos of what thermal runaways actually are and what happens. Just so you understand that now every single firmware has it turned on, but if you're unsure, you want to go and ask in the community with someone who's played with the firmware to make sure. Octoprint, if you plug into Octoprint, it now gives you a warning if that protection's not enabled. So just a little caveat on that.
There you go. Ann says, have you used a smart plug turned off a couple of times in the middle of a print? That could be a fault there of the smart plug itself or the software you're using. One of the things that you have to watch out for is don't buy these from AliExpress. Don't buy these off of Wish. Don't buy these off of Banggood, because 9 times out of 10, it's garbage in the box. Go with a brand you trust. I've never used this brand. This is called Commercial Electric. This comes from Home Depot.
They're a well-known Canadian company, but the key is, and maybe Richard, can you show the back of the box around the UPC? Yeah. I want you guys to understand something here. In order for a product to be sold in Canada here, it has to have certain certifications. So you can see there, this device complies with CAN ICAS 003B. It's got an ETL stamp and Intertech number. In order to sell a product in a store, it has to be certified by your National Electric Authority. And we can get into the arguments about China Electric versus the actual CE logo in North America. But if you go to a store and you buy something, it is a safe device that's safe to operate in your country and has been tested to run safely in your country. Now, if your plug is shutting off, there could be a variety of reasons, whether it's a bad relay inside there and whatnot. But all these plugs have to be rated to handle the circuit power, which is usually about 10 amps. So your circuit's rated for 15 amps, but generally all these devices are rated for 10 amps of power. So it's not tripping because of too much power draw.
Now, the other thing about these is they use your Wi-Fi network. Bear that in mind. They use your Wi-Fi network, and most Wi-Fi networks can only handle so many devices. So those are a couple of things to keep in mind if you're going to be using these. Used a brand named one here in Europe, Ann says, and that's great. Awesome.
It sure sounds to me like you have a faulty relay in there. Now, just so you guys know, Wi-Fi, if your device can't talk to Wi-Fi, the only thing it means is that you can't change the power state of it, right? Yeah. And this is the only caveat. I'm sorry, I don't want to get into depth with this technology right now, but all of these IoT devices require a 2.4 gigahertz network. And nowadays, most of us are on 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. So it does support backwards compatibility, but a lot of these apps don't like the mixed networks. So in my house, I actually run a separate Wi-Fi network using an old router that broadcasts only 2.4 gigahertz on the 802.11g B and G protocols, and that handles all these devices because 54 megabit is more than enough to communicate with all these IoT devices. So that's just my big caveat. I've seen there's tons of, one-star reviews of doesn't work with my Wi-Fi. This is why. And they do explicitly say now it has to work on a 2.4 gig network.
All right, let's get into another question here.
Yeah.
From Trevor Ricker. He says, have a quick question. How do you enable recovery so when you do lose power, you can resume your print? Recovery is in the firmware. It is in your configuration H and your configuration advanced H. There's two things I believe you have to enable, one in either one of those files. Brian, you know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, here it is.
There we go.
I got the firmware right up. So let me just see if I can zoom in a bit for you guys here. Sorry, I was just building some code this morning here. Under config advanced.h, this is on Marlin 2.0.8.2, should be in the same area. This is Creality's implementation of power loss. They've merged into Marlin. You have to uncomment this line to define power loss recovery, and you have to just read through the comments to understand what each of these states do, because the power loss system is partially designed to work with power supplies when they indicate that you've lost the power. And there's some things you can put in here for, if Z homing is needed for proper recovery, for instance, you don't want to enable that. Otherwise, it might home and try to bash through your print. Power loss min Z change. This is a setting that says every time the Z increases by 0.05 millimeters, write a new power loss data update to the SD card. And so if you have a bad quality SD card, you may want to bump that up and say every 2 millimeters, but then the more you increase it, the more you have issues with your recovery. I don't use it much anymore. In fact, I just ended up getting a over-the-counter UPS for a couple $100, and that usually ties me over for any power blips. So really, it does work fine, don't get me wrong. It's just easy enough to enable, but you're going to have a better time with a UPS to keep your prints going rather than trying to recover, because sometimes printers, their Z drops when it loses its power, or you might have an alignment that it just goes and shifts slightly out of place, and then when you resume it, it just proceeds to do garbage. So that's my caveat with that. Yes, you can try it through software. Once you enable that, what will happen is if you're on a print and you turn off the power and you turn it back on, when the motherboard reboots, it's going to go and look at the SD card and say, was there a resume thing? And then it's going to ask you, do you want to resume? It will heat up the bed, heat up the nozzle, and then attempt to resume. It works, but it's not perfect.
Rick Landon's got a question. Jerry, can you pull that up? Thank you. What do the firmware mean? Steps per millimeter, 80, 80, 34, 60, and 90. Okay, so...
That's a huge number. Holy macaroni.
Yeah, 3460, that is a huge number. That would be on the Z axis. So when you're reading those numbers, the first one is your X, your second is your Y, your third is your Z, and your last one is your extruder. Now, there's a second part to this question. If 90 changed to 400 as listed on the BMG extruder. So what he wants to know is, because he's put a BMG extruder onto his machine, you do have to change the steps per millimeter. And it's going to go from 90 to, I believe it's 415 is the number that
it is 415. You're correct. Yeah. So I'm really sorry, guys, because this is very technical stuff. But basically, that number indicates the number of pulses it's going to take to that motor to move it 1 millimeter, whether it's 1 millimeter of filament or it's 1 millimeter of belt. And it's based off of the teeth and everything on site on your gear. So basically, with the rotation factor, you have to take into account number of teeth on your gears. You have to take into account your gear ratios in the case of the BMG, because I believe it's the 3-to-1 ratio.
Yes, it is.
And then you also have to take into account both the degrees per step on your stepper, which most steppers are 1.8 degrees or 200 steps to make a full rotation. And then you have micro stepping in addition to that. So there's the math It exists. I don't want to bore you with it. You can Google it up if you want to go through it and calculate yourself for that exact number. But when it comes to upgrading to a BMG like a Bondtech here, I thought I had one nearby here. I guess I don't at the moment. Oh, here it is. So if we take a look inside, this is a clone Bondtech here, but you can see we've got this big wheel here. Oops, sorry. Let's see if I can get that. There we go. We've got this big wheel that your little motor sits in the center of this hole and spins that. And then that gear attaches inside as a gearbox to, let's see if I can get the angle right here. No, wrong way.
It's going to be a double geared system.
It's a double geared system here, but you can see that little gear in the back there. That one is tied directly to the big gear, and that's how we basically build a little gearbox. So the reason it has to increase to 415 is because now instead of having to rotate that little disc 360 degrees for certain movement, we have to move this larger disc 360 degrees, which is about 4 times more pulses than just the tiny little one there. And that's why that number changes. Now, if you don't have access to your firmware, that's fine. You can actually change that through G-code if you're just upgrading your BMG extruder. And all those G-codes are available on Marlin's website. And usually the manufacturer of the product will say, hey, just add this to your start G-code and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Real quick here, Snapshots question there.
I saw you posted earlier. Sorry about that. Before we shut down for the day. Hey guys, for a genuine E3D V6 ballpark retraction setting, got my CR-10 V2 working well now. Replaced the hot end, cold zone, fan, and extruder. I'm going to tell you guys, when you buy the V2 or you buy the V3, they come with clones of an E3D V6. And those clones are not made to the same specifications that E3D makes. E3D, Creality has now got an agreement with E3D that they're putting genuine parts in. You're going to see prices go up a little bit. But if you are going to use something like an E3D V6 on your machine, remember that you are going to need a little bit more retraction. And the retraction setting, start with, I believe is it direct? Do you have a direct drive or a Bowden? Because those numbers are going to be different. If you're
I find genuine E3D V6, I would not go higher than 2 millimeters of retraction. If you are using a Bowden setup with a non-all metal hot end, usually 6.5 that comes with the firmware and with all the slicers is adequate enough. It's just when you go to an all metal, there is some science behind it. Again, I'm not going to bore you guys with that, but you don't want to retract nearly as far with a metal one, because the PLA sometimes in that warmed state likes to stick to the metal. So you're going to want to keep that down below 2 millimeters, and it's going to depend on your Bowden length and all that. And then you may want to look into items such as linear advance and wipe settings and coast settings to go and reduce your stringing after that instead of increasing your retraction.
Now, the other thing you want to take into account is we talk a lot about all metal. And we've had many people in our comments tell us that all 3D printers come with an all-metal hot end. Technically, that is correct. However, they have a Bowden tube liner or a PTFE liner down the center of them. That PTFE liner distinguishes between an all-metal and a non-all-metal. This is where you're getting into the non-all-metal. And when we talk about non-all-metal hot ends, we're referring to the hot ends that have a PTFE liner that go all the way down to where the nozzle sits. Because when we're talking about that, I don't want to say at the end of the day, I'm trying not to say that. This is going to break down, especially when you're doing hotter material. I have found over time, just printing with PLA at 200, 210, even 215 when I'm using the Matter 3D PLA, that this over time is still going to break down. Yes, when you get up to 240, this will definitely start to melt and flake off, but over time it's going to do that same thing, and it's going to leave little particles in your nozzle, which causes clogs and jams and you wonder why, it was working perfectly, and then now it's not extruding anything. And this could be why. Also, the inner diameter of these varies from manufacturer to manufacturer. So, and your filament sizes vary from manufacturer because they have different tolerances. Some companies claim that they have a 0.02 millimeter tolerance up or down. Some are 0.05 up or down. Microns, we're looking from 50 to 20 microns difference, but we've noticed just by measuring filament that with a pair of calipers, we can tell you that some of it, those claims, are complete horse pucky. And because I can't say the other word, because I don't have a quacker or anything to cover that up, but it is complete nonsense. So just keep that in mind, that when we talk about an all-metal hot end, it means that there is no plastic of any kind, Teflon or anything, that is down near that heated zone where it can break down, okay?
Yeah, and just so you guys know, I'm going to try and pronounce it correctly today, polytetrafluoroethylene, which is PTFE, its melting point is only 327 degrees Celsius. Now, that's the point it liquefies.
Yeah.
And so we're printing about 100 degrees below that. It starts to soften at that point. It starts to vaporize. It starts to swell. This is why most printer firmwares should actually be locked at 240 degrees Celsius for the maximum and not 260 degrees, because it just creates all sorts of issues. So yes, for the all-metal stuff, you go up to the all-metal hot end so that the metal itself, which has a melting point in the thousands of degrees, is not going to impact you. But that being said, the reason why everything is not all-metal is because PLA actually performs wonderfully with Bowden tube setups with the PTFE liner right down to the bottom. You get less stringing. It actually helps shape the filament a little bit in that softened state, and it's more problematic with an all-metal hot end. This is why a lot of people get clogs with their first all-metal hot end, because the PLA, if it's too warm and gets pulled up into that heat break, it's going to swell, and it's either going to jam itself into place, and you get a clog, and then you cool down your machine, and you come in, you heat it up, and you push the filament, and it goes right through. That's because the filament inside there cooled, didn't stick to the metal, and contracted, and can now flow down. Or, if it's in the right temperature point, it sticks to that metal liner, and then you almost have to take a torch to it and heat that area up to liquefy it, and then push it through. So that's why we don't go and say everyone needs an all-metal hot end. It's just simply put, it can introduce issues where they didn't occur previously for you.
Yeah, DeWitt makes a great point here. He says 3D printer manufacturers use all metal as a marketing term, but either don't know what it actually means or they're misleading the customer. Now, when they say all metal, they're not wrong, because it is all metal. What they're not accounting for is for that PTFE liner that goes completely down into that heated zone, okay?
Hey, Richard, do you have one of those Creality hot ends right on your desk? I know you usually have one.
I don't today because my desk is a mess.
Okay, because what I was going to tell you guys is, guess what? If we pull out that Bowden tube, yeah, it's all metal. That's exactly all it is. That's all we're saying, is if you pull that Bowden tube straight out, it is technically all metal. There's nothing in there except metal. But the moment you insert that Bowden tube and it goes right down to the nozzle, in the 3D printing world, that is defined as a non-all-metal hot end. That is a Bowden or a PTFE lined hot end.
And usually you're going to find that PTFE liner in the throat, or the heat break, as some people, as it's referred to. I call it a throat. I interchange. If somebody says to you throat, it's that piece of tubing that goes from the heat sink down into the heated zone. Okay,
maybe quick. We'll if we have that big hot end, we should bring that one down to our Canada Day live stream here. Kind of leading into a Cord XTC's question: when is the stream on Canada Day going to start? Let's say around noontime. That's kind of probably going to be a good time, because we do need some time to set up. We are officially launching Western 3D Services on Canada Day at the Hidden Gem in Okotoks, and we'll be making a post on the first layer on the Facebook group if you guys want to drive down and come check it out. Should be just a fun little day. We'll see. It's also set to be 40 degrees Celsius that day, so if we have to shut down, we might have to shut down.
Okay, so for Canada, on Canada Day, and for Independence Day in the States, which is the 4th of July, we want to let you know that Matter 3D, our good friends Amen and Gerdeman over at Matter 3D, are giving you 10% off and free shipping on 2 or more rolls of their filament. So keep that in mind. It's 10% off and free shipping on 2 or more rolls on Canada Day and on Independence Day. So we appreciate their support. We now exclusively use Matter 3D. We do still have some other stuff around that we use for smaller things, but for our major projects, now we are exclusively using Matter 3D because they're a much higher quality filament. I encourage you, if you haven't yet tried it, please try it soon. Order yourself a roll. Great time to do that on Canada Day, which is July 1st, and Independence Day, which is the 4th of July. Get 10% off on 2 rolls or more. Good thing to do. So go check them out.
I was trying to brainstorm for an idea for a sale name from a Canadian company to Americans, and it's sad that over all the years we've all had such terrible names for each other, like America's Hat and everything. So I thought Friends to the South is probably going to be the best name for our celebrating July 4th here. So we're going to celebrate our Friends to the South Day on July 4th here, which I think is our regular Sunday here. So we are going to treat this as a patriotic day for us and for our friends to the south.
You bet.
So if we want to call it the North American live stream too, we're all together. We love all of you, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
And for those of you that are across the pond, let us know when your special Independence Day is. We'd love to hear about it because we can do shows just specially dedicated to you, where you are. Is TFL Purple available for Matter 3D? Not yet.
It will be.
It is coming. We had to give them, they sent us some sample rolls. They were the wrong purple. We have spoken to them, and they're going back to get the color right. And once it is, we're going to let you guys know when that is available, and you'll be able to order it pretty soon. The other thing is that Matter 3D will be available from other retailers. We're going to let you know when that is available from other retailers in Canada and the U.S.
And if the shipping ducks are in row, we might even have some on Thursday.
Yeah, we might.
So stay tuned. We will let you guys know.
Local maker MI says, I bought 8 rolls from Matter 3D last month. Really great filament. That's amazing to hear. They always want to hear your feedback about their filament because they're always trying to improve, and they want to give you the best customer experience. And that's why we like them so much. Not only do they have a great product, and we've never had a problem with it, but we hope that you guys will learn from our examples. We're going to be doing some special videos for them on teaching people how to use their filaments. Coming up very soon, you'll be able to find them on our webpage. You'll also be able to find them on their webpage as well coming up. So
we've got a challenge for this week to our audience there. With it being Canada Day and with it being Independence Day, I want to see your patriotic prints, and I want to see them posted on the Facebook group this week, and we're going to pick some of the best ones we like and show it on the show next Sunday. So please send us your photos of anything patriotic within reason, nothing hateful, please, but
nothing hateful.
Anything lovely, your eagles, your beavers, your animal beavers. No. I think the heat's starting to get to me, guys.
You're digging a big hole there, pal. I was
watching Quantum Leap last night, so I got a little bit of inspiration from Al. What can I say?
I tell you what we're going to do here. We, because we have some of their stuff, I'm going to send out to the winner a box of samples of their filament, different filaments. So you might get some blues, some reds, some grays, some black, some white. And you'll get one of these fancy little stickers as well. So we hope that we're going to pick a winner, and we'll let you guys know. So this is going to end on probably the Saturday after Independence Day. So we want you guys to get your prints, your patriotic prints, up on the Facebook page. Put them there. Let us see them, and we're going to pick a winner, and we're going to get you a whole bunch of samples of Matter 3D filament, okay? I think you guys will like that. And with that said, my friends, thank you for joining us today. Thank you to all of our members. You saw them down at the bottom. Please hit that like button if you got something out of today, and check out some of our other videos that we have. We've got lots of videos on our website. I know we've been doing a lot of live streams lately. We are going to roll back into doing our regular episodes. It is so freaking hot here. We love the heat, but it's so hot that now we have to be in the basement. And it is, I'm looking at the temperature right now, it's 31 degrees outside. And I'm going to stay down here. I'm going to burn some more wood.
Forecast, as I said, we're in a place that normally hits minus 40 Celsius in the winter. And right now, oh, good. Okay, so the official weather, Canadian weather forecast has it only going as high as 37 on Wednesday, June 30th. Previously, it did say 40. But yeah, it's going to be rough. You know, everybody out west, especially with this heat wave, please stay safe. Keep yourself hydrated. Stay out of the sun. And, you know, if you can keep your printer shut down for a few days, just help to keep that house a little cooler for yourself. So and that's just my safety hint for the week.
Watch your water usage as well, because we know in heat wave times like this that water usage goes way up, and then it causes a problem down the road as well. So I want to thank everybody again for showing up for the show today. We ran a little long. We seem to do that every Sunday now.
we love to spend time with you guys, you know, and especially when we don't get videos out, we do like to make it up to you and have you, you know, enjoy a few minutes of eating your lunch, and then inspire you for the next week, because, you know, when we drop videos, we love to see what changes you guys have made. So I won't lie to you guys, I haven't seen a lot of prints on the Facebook page lately, so it always makes me think, are you guys having an okay time? So please show us your prints, you're good or you're bad. Give us all some inspiration, and we love you all. Now,
the other thing I want to say really quickly is that before we go, I had it right in my head and I forgot now. I know I wanted to say something. Oh, yeah.
You're starting to turn to me.
Yeah. Well, I'm old, so leave me alone. I saw Peter Reynolds has AC. I'm going to his house. He'll like that because we like to spend time together, him and I.
Yeah, he's closer than Brian.
What's that?
He's closer than Brian.
Yeah, he is closer than me. I installed a central air system last year, and it was definitely worth the $5,000, but it's not cheap. So
both Brian and I have a busy week with the opening of our little kiosk down on Okotoks this week. So we may not have a new video coming out this Saturday, just so you guys know. But we are doing a live stream on Canada Day from there, so please join us for that live stream. Hit that like button. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. And if you're not a member yet, check out some of our member benefits. We don't do those benefits every month, but we do try and connect with you guys as often as we can. So go down, hit that join button if you're interested. And we look forward to seeing you guys. Every little bit helps. Watch the commercials that pop up, because they help us in the end. And share these videos with your friends and family if they're into 3D printing. So until we see you next time, Brian,
remember that the first layer is always your foundation to a great laser engraving.
And print.
And print, yes.
Bye for now.
I pulled that one out my butt last night. Have a good one, guys.
And we're